All right, pinch pot basics. You'll start with a lump of clay. The goal is to get like a nice, this one's been carved into, but like a nice rounded pot, a good hollow form. Know that when we start, you'll want that smooth curve to the outside. This is half of a pinch pot. You'll want that nice smooth curve to the outside. I'll show you how to get that. But another key thing is I want to try to get close to even wall thickness as possible. So I don't want one part of my wall really fat, one part really thin. You can see this section through here is pretty nice as far as being even in width. I want to really try to avoid little air bubbles like this. So I don't want to overlap clay and smush it over and trap air, because that can be a spot that would potentially explode in the future in the kiln. So I really want to try to make sure that these are pressed evenly all the way around. Okay, so techniques. You'll start out by trying to make this into a sphere. My 2 cents would be I cup my hand like this, a light cup, and I use this little dipped bold part in here to kind of press the clay into kind of like a mold. I'll also do the same cupping on the other side, and then I continue to turn and rotate and then put back into that mold and then hit from the other side as well. And I do that faster and it looks a little something like this. So I'm feeling spots that bump up a little bit higher and I'm tapping them down and I'm continually pushing in that same spot. So you can see there's like a wet ring on where it fits into my hands. So I'm gonna try to take down those high spots and get it a little bit more round. If I have little cracks or edges, you can smooth those over with your thumb. But remember, I really don't want to pick any clay up and smush it over air that might trap or contain a little bubble in there. Okay, so I'm gonna get as close as I can to spherical. Once I'm happy with it, that's decently round, I will start. And I'd try to pick the center of this. So if I'm gonna center this, I just do a little dimple with my thumb, kind of like that. If I feel like it's centered, if I'm happy with it, then I'll push deeper. If it's off, then just smudge it back over and reset your center dot. So next move is I'm going to be taking my thumb and pushing it down into this pinch pot. When I push it in, I don't want to go too low and out the bottom, but also don't want to go too shallow and leave a really thick base. So I'm looking to push my thumb deep enough to leave about 1/4 of an inch at the bottom here. You can't see internally. It's got to be all based on feel. But what I'll do is I'll position my hand like a crab claw and have my thumb inside and the rest of my hand outside. And I'm trying to guesstimate the spacing between these fingers and try to feel to that every pinch goes to 1/4 of an inch or just consistent spacing. So I'll start here and I'll push my thumb down in. After I push my thumb in, I often will rotate it and push, kind of spin it around my thumb a little bit as I push in to make sure that hole is even, because your thumb has like a bit of a curve to it. So when I push down and in, I'm feeling that spacing. I'm doing that with my hands to try to feel how far apart they are. Right now, just by feeling, it feels like it's about that far. So I need to squish a little bit deeper. So I'm gonna push against that, push it a little bit further in, kind of spinning it to smooth it out. Okay. So now I feel that gap is about there. So that's where I want to be. It's okay if it's not perfectly symmetrical at this point, but you should have a thumb hole and pretty fat walls. So now I'm going to start to thin those walls. What I will do is at the very bottom, I'm going to stick my thumb in, and then I'm using all of these fingers to pinch, pinch, pinch. And I'm going to say I pinch here, then I scoot over, pinch here, scoot over, pinch here, and I'll make a small ring around the bottom. And then I'm going to scoot out just a little bit wider and make a bigger ring of pinches. And then I'll go wider and a bigger ring of pinches. And I keep going wider and doing rings of pinches until I've gone all the way up the sides and to the edge. So every part of this pot will need to be pinched at the exact same thickness. So here's an example. I'm taking this hand, I have pinched that thumb in, I turn it just slightly, pinch again. Turn it just slightly, pinch again. It's mainly with these two here where I'm putting the most pressure. And I do a bunch of small little pinches like you see here. I pinch and turn and pinch and turn, and the goal is to slowly thin that base. No aggressive pinches. I'm just a little at a time giving it a squeeze. So now I've gone all the way around that base. I'm going to pull this from here and slide it back a little bit. So now this is where I start my second ring that's a little bit bigger, and I'm going to come onto this one and start pinching all the way around. I'm doing a bunch of small little turns. Every time I do that, I'm just turning and pinching, turning and pinching. It's just a little bit faster. Leaving the walls too fat can be a risk for air bubbles, but also just takes longer to dry and is kind of a waste of clay. Too thin can be brittle or break, so we want kind of right into the middle. So as I go, I've completed my next lap, slide out a little bit further and keep pinching. If you're doing this right, you should have hundreds of pinches within one pinch pot. So you should be almost on the edge of a hand cramp by the time you finish a good pinch pot, unless you have made quite a few. All right, so that's my third lap. So my ring is getting bigger and bigger. The inside is really starting to open up. This upper half has not been pinched yet, but everything down here has. So this is thinner walls, and this is still pretty chunky. So that wall is still pretty fat. And at the bottom of this, I'm down to that 1/4 inch. So pick up my spot and just keep spinning. So I'm pinching and spinning. If I get to an area that's smaller than a 1/4 inch, then I'll feel that it's too skinny already and I won't pinch. I'll just skip over it. If I get an area that's too fat, then I squeeze it down to that. I'm kind of like a robot that goes to the same thickness every time. So if it's too thin, it is okay to pass over an area and not pinch it. So I'm gonna pick it up the pace a little bit here. I've made a few of these, so this is going to be a little bit more comfortable for me to go faster. I recommend you taking your time. I'm getting closer. I've got to about here. If I'm getting to the end, if I turn the angle of my hand, if I want this rim to turn out, then I'll turn my hand and start pinching out. If I want it to curl in, then I'll angle my hand in and start curling it in. And if I want it to go straight up, then I'll pinch to take it straight up. So I'm going to curl it in. So I'm going to hold my hand in like this. And that's what's going to bring this corner to turn, because I really like that natural curve all the way around. So I'm going to start bringing this in a little bit as I pinch around. Okay, so I've gone all the way around. Now I'm going to go back through and kind of rub my thumb along the inside of the walls up and down just to kind of smooth them out. You can do the same thing on the outside if you want to. Just don't push too hard and squish it. That gets some of the little dimples out from you pinching. If you do a bunch of small pinches, you shouldn't have big lumps. These small ones will be easy to get out. So I recommend lots of small pinches. Okay, so now we can do touch-ups. We can kind of reshape this and reform it. It's pretty symmetrical. It's opened up, big hollow space in there. You can lightly tap it onto the table to create like a little flat spot here at the bottom for it to sit. If you needed to, squish it to an oval, you can squish it to an oval. If you need to cut things out of it, this is where you can edit it. But the goal is to have even walls. This is a pinch pot. You could add in other things, add coils, add slabs, all those choices. Pinch 101.